So, with the WSL on international break, we thought there's no better time to assess all the teams from the first 6 game weeks. We'll be looking across the WSL, assessing teams' performances against our pre-season expectations and looking at how they can improve. So, we're going to go in table order. So, we'll start with the top of the league, and that is, of course, Chelsea. It's been a good start to the season for the Blues. It still feels, though, that their expectations are so high that 2 draws out of the first 8 games in all competitions feels like an underperformance.
Yeah, the top team's always the hardest to rank because, as you say, Chelsea, top of the league, still yet to lose a league game under Sonia Bompastor, and overall couldn't have asked for a better start to the campaign. But then there is that kind of cloud that it's surprising to see Chelsea even drop points. The fact that the title race isn't sewn up by now is a surprise, seeing what we've had to deal with over the last couple of years. So it's always a difficult one to work out where they sit, but I think it really depends what kind of football fan you are and how you look at football, because I think a lot of people will sit down and go Chelsea unbeaten, top of the league, happy days, what a start to the season. But then a lot of people will look at it and say, well, the performances haven't been brilliant. There's been a little bit of Sonia Bompastor still working out what she wants to do tactically and how she wants Chelsea to set up and play in certain games. And obviously they have drawn 2 games that one of them they probably wouldn't have, don't expect to draw against an opposition like Twente. So it's one of those where I think it really depends how you look at it, but on the whole, they haven't lost a game, and you can't really critique a side that have done that. I do think there are still some minor issues that need to be ironed out, and I think that then Sonia Bompastor will need to find a set way to play at some point over the season, or even if she wants to mix it up, you've got to make sure you get that decision right in certain games, because even when we have seen it float about between the 3-back and the 4-back, I think the oppositions that she's matched those systems up against have been a little bit wrong. So it will be interesting to see how the season goes forward with that. But overall, as I say, top of the league, unbeaten. It's been a pretty good start. Most of the players are in form and playing well. So it's all round been a really strong start to the season for the Blues.
Yeah, I completely agree with your comment there on that sort of formation changes. What I will say, though, is I think it's good to see her doing it at this early stage of the season rather than we get to the business end of the season. And as we saw with her last season, experimenting with back threes, and it felt like Chelsea had one really good system that worked throughout the season, and then teams figured it out in the second half of the season a little bit. And we saw Brighton come to Kings Meadow and they got a draw. Obviously, we saw Barcelona come to Stamford Bridge and they were dominant across the 2 legs there. So it felt like everyone had figured out what Chelsea want to do. I don't mind that in the first half of this season, there is that experimentation, especially when the record hasn't deteriorated because of it. They have been unbeaten so far. I think the only disappointing game for me was the FC Twente match because the result didn't come. But there were still chances in that game that if they were taken, Chelsea would have won that game quite comfortably. But again, big opportunities were missed in that one. I've got no problems drawing with Manchester United. I think United are probably one of the most difficult sides to beat at the moment. They're so strong defensively. I think they will pose a threat to any team, really. And it's very difficult to break them down. So I don't have too much of a problem with that, especially when you look at that game and you go, well, Vika Kaptan had one saved fantastically by Valentin's Joyce. Beaver Jones missed from close range. Those 2 go in. It's completely different games. So yeah, it's not been... Chelsea aren't the entertainers anymore in the league, necessarily. They are a team who want to get the job done, want to get the results over the line, and they will have success. And ultimately, it's not necessarily Bompastor's job to make it entertaining along the way. I think it will naturally become more entertaining to watch Chelsea once they sort of figure out their system a little bit more, once that is bedded in. So I'm not too concerned with that, but yeah, I think, fans point towards the 1-0 win over Leicester, go, that's quite disappointing. You'd expect more in previous seasons. The 1-0 win over Tottenham, quite disappointing. But I think the fact Chelsea got the results in those games against sides that were very difficult to break down, playing in a low block, I don't have too much of a concern over that. Shall we grade them then? For this video, we're going to be doing a grading ranking like we're back in school. I think for Chelsea, unless they'd won every match 5-0, you can't give an A star, can you?
Yeah.
And that is inherently the problem with ranking teams this early in the season. But how would you assess Chelsea's start?
I think it's one of those where, for me, compared to the Chelsea expectations, I would say a B. It's been a good, solid, steady start. They're top of the league as expected, but they haven't done anything that is exceeding what I thought they'd do, or anything where I'm sat here going, wow, if they'd won every single match and beaten everyone 4-5-0, then that is what I'd be looking at for an AA star. But yeah, I think a solid B. It's been a good start to the campaign, but nothing out of extraordinary as has happened. It's just been a good, solid, steady start for me.
Yeah, this is very rare, but I completely agree with you. I think if they had beaten Twente, then it would probably push it up to an A for me. I think the fact that they're on 4 points in the Champions League, that does make it slightly more difficult to qualify now in the top 4. I think that is a bit of a disappointment. I think other than that, though, it's been a fairly strong campaign. So yeah, very happy to go with B at this early stage. Let's get on then to second in the league, which is Manchester City. City started slowly with that loss to Chelsea, ended a little bit slowly with a draw to Newcastle. They did win that on penalties in the League Cup, though. But other than that, it's been a really interesting start season for Manchester City. It feels to me that they have completely unlocked all of their attacking potential, but that is perhaps harming them defensively.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting season for Manchester City so far. I think they've been brilliant to watch. They're very entertaining from a neutral point of view because, as you say, they've done really well. I think the reaction was really good from the loss to Chelsea in Match Week 1, and Jegler has come in and they're playing some really good football, but it's not perfect, which means from a neutral point of view, it's brilliant to watch. You've got a great attack with a defence that look a little bit cagey at times, and that means you're going to get goals in football matches. So I think for everyone else that isn't a Man City fan, they've actually that defensive frailty hasn't been a problem, but of course that is not what they want and is not ideal for a side that wants to be pushing for trophies this season. But on the whole, I think it's been a very decent campaign. As I say, I thought the reaction and the response after losing to Chelsea in Match Week 1, it could have been very easy to spiral out of control, and it could have been a really poor start to Jeglert's reign, but they did really well to get back up and get going again. They haven't lost a game since. So really good response from Man City. They playing the football is very, very nice. I think that although there are still problems, the fact that Jeglerts has come in and integrated a new system and they've been as good as they are at the moment is very, very impressive, and a massive credit to what Jeglerts is doing. And we're seeing, again, top players performing at the level we expect. We're seeing these young new signings that have embedded really well and players playing in new roles and shining. So it's been really fun to watch Man City this season. I think they're doing a lot of good things. And if it wasn't for that loss to Chelsea, they've got a draw or something, then they could currently be sat top of the table. So it's been a very, very strong campaign for Jeglerts going into that new job. And the fact they've looked so strong with a new manager at the helm, I think it's been a very, very strong start to this season.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. They're only a point behind Chelsea. They're level on goal difference. And again, while Chelsea lead the league in clean sheets, City are yet to register one, but they have been plundering in the goals, I think is the best way to say it. And yeah, since that loss to Chelsea, they've been flawless in the league. So I think that's really important. I think it's been quite interesting, though, because not the Arsenal game, the Liverpool game I want to touch on, because they probably did deserve to win that game. They're very clutch at the end of that match. But for most of it, I thought they were pretty poor. They really struggled to break Liverpool down. But obviously then they found those goals. I get, you've got the added caveat, the fact that Liverpool are managed by Gareth Taylor and he understands those City players. And so to get that win is important. And it does show that perhaps their title credentials, the fact that they were able to keep going, they're able to fight through that. City sides of old maybe would have been stubborn or relied upon Khadija Shaw, but in that game other players stepped up. It was Iman Bene again who was able to be instrumental. So yeah, I think it was a good victory, but their performance wasn't really there against Liverpool, and the fact they struggled so much against a side who are yet to register a point yet has to be a slight concern. But yeah, and then the Arsenal game, for example, I think probably should have been 3-0 City rather than 3-2. So yeah, it's all swings and roundabouts, but I think overall quite a positive start for Manchester City. I think they'll be helped out this season as a whole by the fact they don't have European football to contend with. Hopefully they'll start to get less injuries. We've already seen them struggle at the start of this campaign. Let's get into grading them then, Harry. How would you assess Manchester City?
Again, this is a tough one, but because I think the performances have been hit and miss, but the results have been there, and that's what you need at the end of the day to win trophies and to win titles. I think it's an A. Again, I don't think that they've done anything that I sit here and go, wow, they're exceeding expectations, but it's very much been a very good start of the season. I think it could be another B. This could be a whole video of Bs, but I think it's probably the best place to put them.
I think City, and we will obviously mention this throughout, because obviously the point of ranking is sort of against expectation. That's got to play a part in it somehow, and I think it depends on how you viewed City. I think some people looked at City coming into this season going, well, they've got no European football to contend with, and their squad's really strong, so they'll probably get Champions League. I think some people were saying that after last season, it's going to take some time to rebuild, and I reckon they'll be fourth again. So it really depends on where you sat. But I think, yeah, they're fairly in line with expectations. Because, but then again, if someone said to you before this season, City from the first 6 games of the season would have beaten Arsenal and narrowly lost to Chelsea, that is above what people would expect. But that's because Arsenal have been worse than people have expected. So it's difficult. I'd say a B is fair. I think they're probably, as in line with expectations as Chelsea are at this stage. And the fact they're only a point off is really encouraging. But yeah, I'd be happy to go for a B again. Let's go on then to third place, which is Manchester United. The only side other than Chelsea in the division who have remained unbeaten so far this campaign. Third in the league. They are highest in terms of goal difference with a plus 13. And they're on 14 points. Only 2 points off Chelsea, 1 point off Manchester City. And it's been a really positive start season for Manchester United.
Yeah, really good stuff from United. I think that, again, they're sat third, which I think a lot of people would think, well, will they be a little bit frustrated by that? But it's the performances and the way they've played that I think has been really impressive. As you say, they're unbeaten, and saying they've already played Chelsea and Arsenal is a very, very strong start to the season. I think that especially the way they played in those games, that they set up in a way that they were very happy to just not lose those matches, which I think is important. The fact that they were at home in both of those games says, it shows that in those games Skinner just didn't want to lose, and that's fair enough. Managers can play however they want, and it made sense because he set up that way and they didn't lose either match. So in that case, it's a winning situation for what Skinner wanted to do. But overall, it's been a good start to the campaign. Again, I think that they've looked a lot better than they did last season. They looked really good last season, but they just look a bit more complete this campaign for Man United. They've reinforced in certain areas. They can rotate the front line and it can still look as strong. And they haven't lost a game. You can't fault them. They've dealt with the challenge of Champions League football very, very nicely, and credit to them for that, because, yes, there have been some difficult games, but, the Vålerenga game was their first ever Champions League match, and in the second game, if Janssen hadn't got sent off, then they probably would have won that a bit more comfortably against Atletico Madrid. So it's one of those where I think United have done superbly well. They're playing really good football, and although they are sat behind Manchester City and are further off Chelsea, they haven't lost a game yet, and I think that it's a very, very good position to be in. And Chelsea haven't played Arsenal, so that will be, if Chelsea and Arsenal drop points and United win, then suddenly United could be top of the table. So it's one of those where United have just got to keep doing what they're doing. But first 6 games, really, really good start to the campaign. They've looked, as I said, more complete, more, just overall, they look more the finished article, more polished 11, and tactically, Skinner looks to have developed even further this season. Yeah, I think despite the fact they're sat third, that they've had a brilliant start to the campaign, and they look like the closest anyone's going to get to Chelsea this season. So yeah, massive credit to Skinner and Man United.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been really impressed with Manchester United. I think it's going to be really interesting because I think the conversation around United for me revolves around risk, and United are very good in terms of risk management. And in those games against the top sides, they've been able to squeeze out draws. And some people will look at that and go, well, they haven't proven they can beat those top teams. But to win the title, they don't need to beat those top teams. They just need to be able to draw and then hope the top teams take points off each other. I think, but the only problem with their method is obviously if you look at like Manchester City, because they're super open and their games are end-to-end, they're more akin to basketball with the way the ball bounces from attack to defence. Because it's like that style, you get games like the Chelsea game where they just lost it, and then you get games like the Arsenal game where they just won it. So overall, from those 2 matches, Manchester City took 3 points. Whereas United, by being really conservative in both games, they got a point from both of them, but they only got 2 points then from the sum total. So it depends on where things happen. But then you think about Manchester City and you look at that Liverpool game, and that easily, for me, could have been a drop of points for Man City.
Yeah.
And so then you look at United's setup and you go, well, actually, they're doing really well. I think, you look at the Champions League performances, they're the only English club to be flawless in their first 2 Champions League matches. I think the way they handled the red card for Dominic Janssen in the Atletico game showed a real maturity and a real tactical understanding and pragmatism from Mark Skinner, which I think is really important. So I think they've got it all going for them at the moment, Manchester United. I think, it's difficult because where to grade them, because again, where do you assess them against where you expected them to be? I think they're fairly in line, but that's because I was very hot on Manchester United last season. I think, again, they've definitely got better over the summer, as perhaps we expected.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be another B, because they're unbeaten, but they're also third, and I think third it's a difficult place to be because it feels like third. Okay, they're already behind two teams in that title race, but they haven't lost a game. And if they were top, then it would be an A star, or it'd be very high up. But yeah, as you say, expectations are in the Champions League spaces. They're going very steady. The thing that does is even more impressive for me is the fact that I haven't. There hasn't been a game. I mean, obviously there were parts of the Arsenal and Chelsea games, but overall they haven't looked like losing yet this season.
They haven't looked like conceding at any point, apart from the Chelsea game. I would say even Arsenal didn't ever look like scoring a goal in that match. If anything, United looked closer, despite how defensively solid and how defensively minded they were being in that game. But yeah, they've been super impressive. I would push it up to an A. I think they have been really strong this season, and it's again, you know, it depends on how you look at it. But I think how much better can United be than what they've done so far? Yeah, an A star if they've beaten you, Arsenal beating Chelsea, and was at top of the league, then yeah, A star. Well done, Mark Skinner. But I think for me, it's been an A start to the season. So do you agree?
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Awesome. Let's get on then to fourth place, possibly the biggest surprise package of the season so far, and that is Tottenham. Currently with a completely neutral goal difference of 0, but 12 points to their name. Really impressive start of the season then for Tottenham. How would you assess that?
Yeah, big credit to Martin Ho. The work he's done is phenomenal. They look like a completely different team to the side that turned up last season in WSL under Robert Villaharm. All the problems, not all the problems, but the majority of the problems have just evaporated, and that is massively encouraging. And I think that what makes this even more impressive, and again, this is a weird way to look at it, but a lot of people will look at the 5-1 loss to Man City and go, clearly there are still a lot of problems there and it's not all perfect. And I agree with that. But the thing that actually that loss has done is it's impressed me more about Tottenham in terms of the Chelsea result, because what they've done is they were dismantled by Manchester City, but they reacted to that. They regrouped. They didn't let it knock their really good start of the season. They got back on. They did draw the Villa after that, but they didn't lose that game. They went and won another one, and they turned up at Chelsea. And because City beat them 5-1, everyone thought that Chelsea would roll them over, and they turned up at Kingsmeadow and only lost by a goal to nil. And that, for me, that change from being turned over by City to narrowly losing to Chelsea shows how far they've come this season, because even in the first 6 games, they've managed to solve some of the problems that they had last campaign, or even in this campaign. So, big credit to Martin Ho, because that was is difficult, because I'll be honest, after that City result, I sat there thinking, okay, they've started well, but now they'll start to drop out through the table. That we're seeing the top.
The games they'd won were West Ham at home and Everton away, 2 sides who have had less than impressive starts to the campaign. So yeah, I think that's justified.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, they turned it around and they look really, really good, and they've got players firing. Jess Naz looks to maybe have found a bit of pizzazz and a bit of threat again. I think obviously Beth England is still the player that she is. Olivia Holt is getting to play football, and look at what she's doing with it. What a player! And finally, we're not just going to see her sat on the bench for a whole season, looking at a really, really promising talent there. But overall, they've looked more complete, and defensively, my defensively, I might just give them I might break the grading scale for how they've developed defensively. They look like a completely different team. Ash Neville looks like a completely different player. The work that has gone into Tottenham looking so defensively solid is outrageous, and massive credit to everyone behind the scenes and all the new staff at Tottenham, because what a turnaround for the Lily Whites, and fair play to them. 4th in the table, best of the rest as it stands, just outside the Champions League spots. What a start to the season this has been.
Absolutely. I think the fact that they have been able to do it without a massive squad overhaul, I think we looked at the summer window and went, well, Koger and Tamberg, 2 really good additions, but is that enough? After how embarrassingly poor they were last season, is that enough? A lot of people thought Tottenham would go down this season. I looked at Martin Ho coming in. I rate Martin Ho incredibly highly, and I'm glad I've been vindicated in that assessment. But yeah, I think a lot of people looked at them and said, well, without any more additions, they're going to go down. But they've done incredibly well, and I think it's a mixture of Koga's come in and just been incredible. I think already establishing herself as one of the top centre-backs in the WSL. I think every game she's played, even the City game, where she was like the last captain on the Titanic, just watching the ship go down around her, but she still remained decent in that game. I think the Chelsea game, a large reason why they only lost 1-0 there was Toko Koga, and the way that she dealt with Thompson after she got past Neville. Koga was there to shut that down immediately. So Yeah, and huge, obviously, credit goes to Martin Ho. I think the way that he has developed an understanding between those players, the way that he has given Tottenham an identity, a new style. There is now, I think, with Tottenham coming into the season, you would have expected to see either of them become a really defensively solid team, but still struggle for output, or a really good team coming forwards, but perhaps the defence was still a bit of a mess. But they already look really polished. It's now obviously how you build on these really solid foundations. But I think Martin Ho has done really well to come in, set those foundations. As I say, the tactic is nothing insanely complicated, but it works, and it's functional, and it's something now that you can build upon, and you can start to bring in players and complicate it a little bit more, and maybe we see a bit more of a few more positional rotations. I mean, we've already seen elements of that. I think that's what I've been really impressed with from watching Tottenham in week 1 and week 2, and then obviously the loss to City, and then watching Tottenham in the more recent weeks. It's this huge evolution in tactics in just a very short space of time. You look at that Brighton game and the way the right wing is coming over to the left-hand side and linking up, the way that you've got players dropping into different positions and those positional rotations, the way that Evelina Suhonen started dropping in almost to the left-hand side to form a back three, and then that just gives them a little bit of a numerical advantage in certain positions. It's already really impressive from Tottenham, and it's going to be really interesting to see now how they build on that and how they continue to get better. So I think it's all positive for Tottenham. Is this an A-star?
I think it has to be. Compared to season expectations, I think I had them 11th. So I think it has to be an A-star. They've massively exceeded everyone's expectations. There is nobody out there that sat at the start of the season going, yeah, I think Tottenham will be 4th after 6 games.
I was close. I didn't say 4th, and I don't think anyone on the planet said 4th, but I wasn't far off with Tottenham. I did think they'd be better this season, but I didn't think they'd start so well. I thought it would be more of a gradual process. I think the big blemish is, of course, that City loss, which could arguably push it down, but 12 points from 4 games above Arsenal in the league, I don't think you can say anything other than an A-star. Speaking of Arsenal, let's get to them then, because they are 5th in the league, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of fans waiting for our assessment on them. 5th place, a +7 goal difference, 11 points to their name. Not the start of the season that Arsenal would have wanted to build on the huge success of last campaign.
Yeah, not at all. Reigning European champions, and as you say, I think there was a lot of expectation that this year could be the year for Arsenal. They could come in and potentially topple Chelsea at the top of the league, and if they're going to do that this campaign, they have got a lot of work to do. And the game this Saturday is going to be a couple of Saturdays time, so it's going to be an absolute massive one. But yeah, it's been a really difficult start to the season for Arsenal. It's been a really difficult one for assess, and I think a lot of people have got a lot of different opinions on it because it's been a real mixed bag, because there have been some performances that have been really, really poor. The games they've won, some have been decent, some have been really unconvincing. So they're a really hard one to judge because it's not been all bad, but there has definitely been quite a bit of bad in there. It's a difficult one to work out where they sit. I think the last 2 results against Benfica and Brighton were absolutely massive because the run before the 3 or 4 games before that were really, really poor. And I think that the main problem for Arsenal, at least I think personally, is that it's not necessarily the games that they've been losing. It's the games that they've won just haven't been convincing. It's been flat. It's been a little bit... the Brighton game was a narrow margin win for an own goal. Even the Benfica one I mentioned there, it took them quite a while to find the back of the net and to get going. And it's just... Yes, the losses haven't been great, and that needs to the loss, Lyon, City, the draw away at United, dropping points in those kind of games, the draw to Aston Villa. But for me, it's been the games that they've won. They've just not, have been really, really flat. London City was pretty good. West Ham again, that was better. But I just think that it's even the good performances, or not the good, even the good results, have still been pretty poor performances. And yes, they've got the result over the line, but it's just been really unconvincing, really flat. And it's become, I think, even when they've won games, you can tell the Emirates aren't enjoying what they're seeing.
I think that's the thing. I think when you look at those first 2 performances in isolation, you'd say they weren't perfect, but there were definitely elements that they can build upon. I think, again, it just comes down to the lens in which you view this season so far. But with the context we've got now, a few game weeks later, what we can start to see is that Arsenal, the underlying issues that I noticed in those first 2 matches, and that a lot of Arsenal fans went, well, they're not, we don't have to worry about those 2 yet. It's still bedding into the season. Those underlying issues have become more prevalent, and then in games against bigger or better opposition, they've exploited them. And that shouldn't come as a surprise, really. I think, you look at those first two games, the London City side in their first ever WSL game, and London City actually looked really good in the first half, and then sort of fell apart as an Olivia Smith worldie in there, and a really nicely worked movement by half-time. Arsenal were leading, but that performance still wasn't incredible, and actually for the first 20 minutes, London City probably should have been more than 1-0 up. You get to the West Ham game, the 5-1 win, and you go, well, again, at the time, it's 5-1, and the goal that we conceded came from an own goal. But when you look at how bad West Ham have been in the subsequent weeks, and you look at actually how at the start of that game, West Ham kept getting those high turnovers, kept winning the ball back, looked like they were really going to do something in that game. And then throughout the game, they were worn down, and it was 3-1, and they threw on 2 strikers, and that made no sense. They lost 5-1. And so again, those first 2 results really flattered things. And then you look at the next run of games where they drew with Manchester United, and I thought that was actually one of their better performances.
Yeah.
Because that was probably the most offensively solid we've seen them. But again, they still couldn't break down Manchester United. The Aston Villa game, one of their better performances, but still not good. And obviously, they didn't kill that game off. And then the game management for Arsenal has been really poor this season. But in that game, they just never killed it off. And they always left that door open to Villa. But they scored that goal and then sat back. And I think there was no reason to do that. If they just, you've got your foot on Aston Villa's neck and they let off. And I think you've got to finish the job in the first half. And again, they went more defensive and they ended up, they took their time and Aston Villa punished them for it. The City game, I think 3-2 flattered them. I thought they were really poor there. I thought that they really struggled to play out. City were poor in build-up. And Arsenal should have exploited that better, and they just didn't. And then Arsenal were really poor playing out from the back, really poor progressing the ball. And again, I was really unimpressed with that one. Lionesses I wasn't too worried about. I don't think a 2-1 loss to Lionesses is any concern, to be honest. 2 really well taken goals by Melchi Dumornay. Both came from defensive errors, but that's less of a structural, tactical issue, more of an individual and personnel one. So, I wasn't too concerned about that. I thought the Brighton performance was terrible. Really, really, probably their worst performance of the season. How on earth they won that football match? They just didn't. They never looked like scoring. And if it wasn't for a cross deflected into her own net by Marissa Olislagers, they wouldn't have scored. If Brighton had any substitutes, they'd have done the same thing that Villa did. They'd have thrown players on at the end. They'd have gone for the game, and they'd have got something. But they didn't have those options. They didn't have Adjaman Kafaji because they're both Arsenal loan players, and all of the rest of their wingers. Players like Madison Haley out injured. Their Frank Kirby who's only just back from injury. Camacho is new to the league. So Arsenal got away one there. And then Benfica was a fine performance. Again, the same problems were there, but Benfica aren't an incredibly strong team, and Arsenal got that one over the line. So I've not been impressed watching Arsenal in a single game this season. They've had an international break now. I think that reset could be really important. They've got Chelsea coming up next weekend. Not this weekend coming, the weekend after. That is a really important game. That, for me, completely defines Arsenal's season. If they win that match, it's game on. Arsenal are back in it. If they lose that, they might as well throw all their eggs in the cup competition because they're not going to get that back. They're not going to win the league from that position. So that is the most important game of Arsenal's season. They've got to get it right. Because again, if they have the same problems that we've seen in these first 8 games, they will lose that match to Chelsea. And so they've got to fix up. Rating-wise, we're looking down the bottom of the scale, I would say. I don't think it's an F at all. I'm just saying I think we're looking further down the scale. How low do you think you can go with this one?
I think it's below expectations, which makes it below a C, but it's not disastrous. They're still 5th in the league. They've still won, bar the Villa game, really. They've kind of won the games you'd expect them to win. So I'd probably say a D, but it's still very much salvageable. It's not, as I said, it's not, they're sat 8th in the league and they could get relegated. It's nowhere near that. They'll be absolutely fine. And as you say there, that Chelsea game, there's still time for them to turn this season around, but it's been below expectations. C is probably like, very, is the average, is average. Obviously, I'd say they've just been a bit, they've been below that, so a D.
Yeah, I think D's a very good ranking. I think, to really go into the school analogy, a C's a pass.
Yeah.
And if they do a bit of homework, they'll probably get around the Champions League spots this season, and we'll get to the end. This is their predicted grade. We'll get to the end of the season, and we'll go, you know what? They've done enough to pass. It's not incredible. They're not going to Harvard. But they've done enough. They're fine where they are. So, I think a D is fair. I think it's been a really poor part. I think there'll be Arsenal fans that will give E's and F's. And I think there'll be Arsenal fans that would say, well, actually, a bit more positive at a B. But because the results in some competitions have been there. But I think overall, yeah, I think a D is a very fair ranking. And let's get on then to, in 6th place, London City Lionesses. 6th in the league with a -7 goal difference. 9 points to their name, though. 3 wins by a 1-goal margin so far, or 4 if you count the Subway League Cup as well. They're getting wins over the line. And something has to be said for their resolve in those matches and their ability to really grind out those results.
I'm finding this one really difficult because
before coming into this video, this was the most difficult one for me.
Yeah, it's one of those where I never want to just hate on football teams for the sake of anything, but a lot of people are going, wow, look at what London City are doing, newly promoted, they're 6th in the league, and they've won loads of games, and while I give them credit for that, because that is incredible, fair play, they've put those wins on the board, they've had a brilliant, Crystal Palace got 10 points last year, London City are already on 9, that is brilliant, but I just can't, every time I look at where they are on the table, I just keep thinking, how on earth are they in this position? I have no idea how they've got here. I've watched the games, and you watch them play football, and I just think, how have you got the results from this game? I just don't think it's working, and everyone is saying that. We said it pre-season, and we knew. I'm really annoyed this happened because it's made me a little bit like a fool. But I said you can't just throw money at a league and expect to do well in it, and it's worked. They're doing well, but in the short term, it's done all right. But I think they've massively got away with it.
I think again, you just look at the results and you look at the context and you say, well, they've won 3 games a season and they've come against the 3 worst teams in the league.
Yeah.
1-0 against Liverpool, 1-0 against West Ham, 2-1 against Everton. Those 3 teams have all been abysmal.
Yeah.
And then they've played 3 teams right at the top. The problem is we've not seen them against a Brighton or a Tottenham or anyone in that mid-pack. We've seen them play the bottom 3 games, which you think, well, they have to win those because those teams have been really poor. And they've played the top 3 where you think, well, losing to those isn't too bad. So they played Arsenal, they played United, they played City as well. They've got Chelsea coming up this weekend, and I wouldn't expect anything less than something around that 4-1, 5-1 mark, which is how they've been losing. I think Chelsea at the Bridge tend to be more expansive, a little bit more open in how they play. So I think London City may get a goal in that game, but I think it'll probably be around that 4-1, 5-1 mark. Again, that could see them drop into the bottom half again, so then it slightly changes how we view them. But at this point in the season, it's not been bad in terms of results. I think the League Cup loss to Leicester is very telling. Yeah. I think the fact they only beat Crystal Palace 2-1 in the League Cup in the game before that is also very telling. So I don't think that they are anywhere near the finished article. No. I think that they have got away with it so far. The penalty in the Liverpool game was never a penalty. No. The goal in the West Ham game was just a massive mistake from King Ajemic. And you take those points away and it's a completely different story. So as much as, as good as they've done to get those 9 points, they could now go on a run where they do struggle to pick up some points. So it all depends. If they have built on the somewhat positive foundations that we've seen, then I think we'll see them pick up some points in the next few weeks. But you'd expect them to lose to Chelsea, and they've got some tougher games on the horizon, some of those mid-pack teams who are very good football teams, and I think they will struggle to get the points over the line. They should beat, Leicester City, but again, they lost to them in the Cup. So it's going to be really interesting to see what they do at this point in the season. I think they are way too reliant on Kosovora Asllani. I think the fact that she has got 3 goal contributions so far this season, she has been incredible, but the rest of the team's got to step up around her. I think defensively, they have been absolutely awful. Yeah,
and they have been awful. And as you say, I think it's one of those where against the big sides, that has been exploited and they've conceded loads of goals. Against the weaker sides, because they've been so poor in attack, they've managed to keep clean sheets. I think that, it's been it's been a really difficult one because the performances have not merited the results at all. I think the Everton game, okay, fair play, that was a good one. But again, it's, penalties is another thing. That defensive record, the discipline has been shocking. The amount of penalties they've given away in the first 6 match weeks is not good enough. You cannot get away with that at this level. I said the same about Tottenham.
It reminds me of Tottenham last season where they've somehow got results in games they probably shouldn't have. I mean, they've not had any yet where they haven't had a shot and yet they've scored a goal. But they've got results where perhaps they shouldn't have. They're giving away a load of penalties. Defensively, they're really open, and they're super reliant on one player.
Yeah.
It just reminds me a lot of Tottenham last season. But to look at it the other way, if you ignore, and it's a big thing to ignore 2 million quid, 3 million quid, however much they've spent, if you ignore that, they are a side who've just come up from the Championship. They've won the games they should have won, and they've lost the games they should have lost. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with how they've gone about this season. So again, it all depends on how you view them coming into the campaign. I thought they'd have a worse start than they've had. So I think the fact that they are in the position they're in is an overperformance. But there'll be people saying, well, they spent £3 million and they should have a side that competes with the top teams. And they've been trounced when they've played those top teams. And the performances across the season so far have been really poor. Therefore, it's really difficult to grade them. But let's give it a go. Harry, how would you grade Lionesses' season?
At the end of the day, I have to do it the way I've done it in every other team on what I expected.
Just give a B.
Yeah, just give a B. But based on what my expectations of London City were, I said it in the preview that I thought at the first international break they would be bottom of the league with 0 points because I didn't think it would gel and I didn't think it would click, and it hasn't gelled, by the way. Let me just make that very clear. It has not gelled. They've just got away with it. So, but I have to go off expectations. I thought they'd be bottom without a point, or maybe they'd have scraped 1 or 2 here and there, but they're sat 6th with 3 wins. So I think I have to give it an A, just because compared to expectation, they've absolutely exceeded them for me. But I can't say A-star because it's been nowhere near perfect.
No, it's far from. I think A is very generous. I think if we hadn't handed out so many Bs, you'd be all over a B.
Oh, yeah, true.
I would lean more towards a B.
Go a B.
B?
Yeah.
There we go.
I don't want to give them an A. I just felt like I have to, but I'll happily go
I
with B.
think if you give them an A, when we do this ranking potentially again at Christmas, you would be in tears when we're looking back. And Harry, what'd you give them? A.
Why did I do that?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll see. Maybe they'll get a lot better and then they get that A. So we'll give them a B and then they've got room to go up or down. 7th in the league then, and that is Brighton and Hove Albion. 7th in the league, plus 1 goal difference, 7 points so far. Brighton, I have found a really weird team this season. I think they've done really well in some games. Like, I thought they were really good in the City game. I thought they were really good in the Arsenal game, and both those matches they should have won. They were unlucky in the Arsenal game that they were lacking probably a finisher. If Adjermain plays that game, I think they win it. And in the City game, they were very unlucky that City managed to, work out in the second half, and they looked a lot better, and Brighton struggled to handle that with that. But I think when you look at games like the Tottenham match, where they were awful, it then makes their season a little bit more difficult to assess because that performance was genuinely terrible. They just couldn't keep up with Tottenham at all.
Yeah, for me, Brighton have got better, but while getting worse in terms of last season, they got loads of points because they played a very open, a very risky way. It was very risky what they did. They went gun-ho for games, and it meant they won some, they lost some. This season, they've looked more complete, more, tighter at the back, a little bit more tidy. They've brought in defensive reinforcements that have looked stronger, but they've got less points because they've gone more conservative, and it's just meant that they seem to have lost every game narrowly. Like you mentioned it there. They lost 2-1 to City, 1-0 to Arsenal, 1-0 to Tottenham as well. It's just 2-1 to West Ham in the League Cup. There's been so many really narrow losses.
That's worrying. Losing to West Ham, even if it is the League Cup, it's got to be a concern. But equally, they have lost the games you'd expect them to lose, bar Tottenham. But Tottenham are a bit of an outlier because, again, they've overperformed massively. So how do you assess where they are actually? It's difficult to say. But I think, the Villa game, I think a draw is fair. That's what you'd expect from that match. Losing to the top, 2 top teams in City and Arsenal, and then getting a win over Everton, getting a win over West Ham. It's what you'd expect from Brighton. I think at the start of this season, it's very clear Dario Vidicic wants his team to be a lot more defensively solid than they were last year. And I think they've done that. I think they've been very good defensively. They've only conceded 4 goals in the league this season. That's a ridiculously good record. So it is difficult to argue with that. But you want Brighton to be the entertainers. They usually are. Last season, they were one of the most entertaining sides to watch. I think, they face United this weekend, 2 sides that are very good defensively. What's going to happen? Who's going to go for it? That's going to be the question. But I think Brighton, they've not been the most fun to watch, but they have got the results. 7th in the league with 7 points. It's not a bad start. They're absolutely in line with expectation, by the way. Expected points has them, I think, in the identical position to where they are. So, I think they've had a fine start to the season, but they've just not been as fun to watch as they normally are. But they have been, productive. So, again, it's difficult to say they've not been brilliant.
Yeah, I think
not been good. Sorry, I think brilliant's an exaggeration.
It's just that shift from the we're going to score one more than you mentality to let's try and control the game and have a bit more. It's what Chelsea have done, and it's again it showed there are some problems to work out with that. Yes, it's benefited Brighton, but it also has had some problems with it. So I think, as you say, very middle of the road, very on par so far this season. For me, I'd probably say a C.
Yeah, I think before we get to the grading, I was just going to say, I think it's quite a clear idea from Vidicic to be a lot more defensively solid. I think coming into this season, where London City were coming into the league, there was a lot of unknowns there. Brighton have replaced their goalkeeper, both their centre backs, and had a bit of a change across the board. Really, I think just being a lot more defensively solid, so they just stay mid-table this year, is a very fine idea. I think the question now will come next season, and perhaps throughout this season, if they can evolve throughout the season, do they become a lot better in attacking areas? Because I think that's where they've been misfiring. Equally, Michelle Adjumang, I believe, before she scored recently, and perhaps still, is the biggest underperformer of XG so far this season. She has a lot of opportunities, hasn't really taken them yet. So if she starts firing in the way that we know she can, maybe Brighton start getting those goals. And actually, I think in that Arsenal game, that's exactly what they were missing, was someone like a Michelle Adjumang just to finish things off. So yeah, I don't think they're in a too bad position at all. I think provided they don't lose heavily to United, if they can nick a positive result, that's a really good result. But yeah, I don't think they've been too bad. You say a C? I'm happy with a C. Again, Brighton, because you look at the start of last season where they came out of the blocks rapidly, and you thought, well, they're going to be like top 5 or something, and they ended up 5th in the end, didn't they? But the back half of last season was so poor, to get it back to a very solid level, it's very good management from Vidicic. But yeah, I think a C is fair. Let's go on then to Aston Villa, 8th place in the league, a neutral goal difference of 0, 6 points on the board. Obviously, only 5 games played for Villa, with the Liverpool game being postponed. So that, again, has to factor into the equation. But I don't think 8th is too bad, considering who they've played already this season.
Not at all. I think a lot of people have been kind of starting to hit the panic button and really worrying about Aston Villa. But personally, I've no problems whatsoever. I think that they've had a very, very solid start to the season. The table position doesn't look great, and there is a bit of pressure on them. I think it always is. It's a really difficult thing because it's one of those where once you get down there, people then start to think you're in a bit of trouble. But if I'm a Roy and Villa, I've got no concerns whatsoever. That they've got a game less, and that is against joint bottom of the league. So you think if they win that, suddenly they're on 9 points and they're up into, would it be 5th or 6th around there? Yeah. So it's one of those where no need to panic at all. They've played a game less, and as you say, they've had some really, really difficult matches. And they've played well in them. I thought that the game against Chelsea, they were very, very strong, and they gave Chelsea a really good game. Started so fast, and again, it's one of those where it just ran away. Chelsea turned it around and did well to react in the second half, but first half, Villa were probably the better side. So they've played some difficult sides. They've gone away to Brighton, who last season only lost, was it 1 game at home, or they were absolutely phenomenal at home. So massive credit to what Villa have done. I think that, yes, 8th doesn't look very good, and a lot of people will be panicking about it, but personally, I think they're having a really good season, and it's one of those where if they play like they have in the first 6 games for the rest of the campaign, they will very easily find themselves in the top half at the very least. So it's been some really good performances. If Ebony Salmon starts hitting a barn door with banjo, then they might actually, I think that their season will look better and better as it goes on.
Well, yeah, defensively, incredible. They have not conceded a single goal against sides not named Chelsea and Arsenal. So, and that's in all competitions. They haven't conceded at all in the League Cup. Haven't conceded at all. They played Tottenham and Bristol City, won 3-0 against Bristol City, drew 0-0 with Tottenham, did lose on penalties. Obviously, love the League Cup format, so random. But yeah, they're then drawn. I think the result that I'm most concerned about was the draw with Leicester. Not the loss to Chelsea. They were brilliant in that game, performance-wise. They just got unlucky to face Chelsea. They drew with Arsenal, and they were brilliant in that match. But the draw with Leicester is the one that concerns me, because that game should have been 3 or 4-0. Ebony Salmon was through on goal at least 5 times.
Yeah.
And there was one in there for Chastity Grant as well. That had to be a win. That's a disappointing thing. If they were on 8 points, they'd suddenly be, 7th in the league. They'd be a point off London City, and they'd have already played Arsenal and Chelsea. That's a really positive start. I still think the performances have been there. I think the fact that they have only lost 1 game so far this season, that was to Chelsea, I think that's a really positive sign. And if they keep that going, they'll be absolutely fine. So, yeah, I'm not at all concerned for Aston Villa right now. The only concern of mine around Villa is, when is Ebony Salmon going to start scoring? Because that's been the only question for me. The fact their top goal scorer at the moment is Lynn Vilms is not a great sign. As good as Lynn Vilms is, she's playing right centre half in attack. So someone's got to step up. Is it going to be Salmon? Gabby Nunes, I don't know when she's back from injury. That could be a big return. Kirsty Hansen, keep playing her.
Yeah.
Don't know why she got benched. She's been their best attacking outlet. So I think Villa are in a really positive position. I think they'll be absolutely fine this season. They've got to start picking up the points soon to show those performances. Again, though, they're probably going to be fine. You look at some of the sides below them, they're probably absolutely fine. But they've got to start picking up those points eventually.
Yeah, it just feels like it's been the same story for Villa since the start of last season, where when will they start just putting points on the board?
When's it going to come together?
I genuinely think they've played well, even under Robert DePaul. We sat there going, how on earth are they so low in the league? And obviously it did spiral out of control and they did start playing badly. But I think since the start of the 24-25 season, the performances have been top 5, top 6 worthy, but they have just not picked up the points in any games. I think
the funny thing is they had that season, didn't they, where they got 4th in the league, ahead of Manchester United, I believe, or something around there, and they were really good that season. And then since then, it's been a little lower, and everyone's going, "Well, Aston Villa still underperforming." But actually, I think performance levels have been there. They've just been quite unlucky with how the results have turned out. But yeah, maybe they need a striker. Maybe they do. Emily Salmon, I think she's a very good footballer, but she's got to start showing it soon. Because if not, Villa have got to be in the market for a forward who's going to finish off these chances. Expected points has them around 7th, I believe, and that was obviously factoring in the fact they've already played Chelsea, already played Arsenal. So yeah, I don't think it's been a bad start to the season, but those points have got to start coming. 6 points, only 1 win. So yeah, really good at drawing games. Defensively, they are excellent. They've got to now have that attacking output to match. In terms of a grading, what would you go for?
Again, it's really difficult because compared to expectations, I'd expect to see them higher than 8th, but they've played a game less and they've played well.
I think C.
Yeah, I'd
probably
say C.
Because if they had won against Leicester, then B. But they are still 8th in the league, and it does leave them a little bit vulnerable with City United still to play before Christmas.
Yeah, I think it's one of those where if they'd beaten Leicester and they win that game in hand, then suddenly it's a B bordering on an A. But because of those, the performances have been a B. The results have been a bit maybe a C, maybe a D. So yeah, I think a C overall is a pretty fair rating.
Yeah, on to 9th place then, and that is Leicester City. -5 goal difference, 5 points so far in the league, though. I don't think there is a soul on the earth who thought Leicester City would have 5 points in the first 6 WSL matches. So I don't think you can say anything other than that's a really positive start to the season for Leicester.
Rick Passmore, massive credit to that man because
I think he should change his name.
What is
Rick Pass Less.
Pass less.
Pass Never. They have had the lowest average possession, 38.7% average possession this season. Don't pass. It's just, he doesn't want to pass more.
He doesn't want to pass at all, but they don't need to because they're getting points. What a job he has done. Called in after they decided to get rid of Amandine Mikel a couple of days before the season started. And it is just, what a carnage situation at Leicester. Everyone predicted them bottom of the league. Everyone thought they'd struggle and that they'd just, nothing, no one would care. They'd just get relegated. I think
especially after that opening game of the season where it was 4-0 Manchester United and you looked at the way Leicester's defence just got torn apart. But actually, since then, only a 1-0 loss to Chelsea, only a 2-1 loss to Tottenham, a 1-0 win over Liverpool, 1-1 with Everton, 0-0 against Aston Villa. Yes, defensive against Aston Villa, that was atrocious. But they got the point, and that is so important. They beat Ipswich Town in the League Cup. They beat London City in the League Cup. They're now looking very likely to qualify for the quarterfinals of that. Rick Passmore, take a bow. What a really good job he's done in that role. So, immensely proud of what they've been able to do this season. I think we've seen a lot of Leicester fans in the live chat commenting on videos going, well, you know what, compared to what we thought this season was going to be, this has been really positive. So, yeah, Leicester just got to keep going with what they're doing, really.
Exactly that, and Rantala is back, and
Nomi Mouchon, the first time ever, is fit to play.
Yeah, I think that Rantala has had quite a lot of sub appearances now, and he's just starting to get back to her feet. I think it will take time. They've both been out for a while.
But they have now had 2 weeks international break, where they've had that chance to sort of regain fitness.
So yeah, I think maybe it's exactly what we said Mikel needed to do, and that's what we thought she'd do, until her job was taken off her. But it was just
a few days before the start of the season. Brilliant decision.
For Leicester, it was a bit of a waiting game. We said it at the end of last season. They're just going to have to just wait, be patient, and wait for their players to come back. And now that's what they've done. The fact they've got 5 points on the board without Rantala and Mouchon fully fit and backfiring is credit. And I think that Leicester fans will just be happy to not have to watch a defensive midfielder or O'Brien or whoever play up front. They're going to have a striker.
Shannon O'Brien has played a lot up front and not been too bad this season, to be fair. Did pick up a very stupid
That
red
was so
card.
silly.
But yeah, other than that, hasn't been too bad. I think Leicester for me, and the biggest positive I can say about them is that they admit where they are.
Yeah.
You look at the teams below them right now. Everton trying to play out from the back. Liverpool trying to play out from the back. West Ham and there's nothing wrong inherently with trying to play nice football. But when you're in that relegation dogfight, points mean a lot more than performances.
Yeah.
And Leicester have got those points. They've taken 5 points in the first few games of the season. So, yeah, immensely impressed with how they've done. I think Passmore deserves huge plaudits for what he's managed to achieve because the squad quality and the harmony coming into the season must have been so low. And he's managed to get those positive results. The only one who lost to Chelsea is a really impressive result. So, yeah, I think Leicester will be really proud of what they managed to achieve so far. So I think it's got to be up there in the gradings.
Yeah.
It's not an A-star, don't get me wrong.
No.
They've not trounced Man United 5-1 and they're not walking the league. But I think they've done really well considering the expectation.
Yeah, again, I think it's one of those. It's between an A and a B. I don't really know where it
I'm
sits.
very happy to give an A because I don't think there is anyone who thought they'd have a point at this point in the season. But they've got 5, and that is a really impressive record. So they've navigated some really tough fixtures. They've still got West Ham to play before Christmas. You'd think that game right now should be a win. And so I think they can be in a really good position. They've still got Arsenal to play as well. So that should be a win. But no, Leicester doing all right. I'm very happy to give them an A.
Yeah.
Let's go on to 10th place then, and that is Everton, -4 goal difference, 4 points to their name. The season started so impressively with their win away at Anfield, but since then, it's been very abysmal, Harry.
They've been terrible. I'll be honest, they have been terrible, and they are very lucky right now that somehow there are 2 teams who are doing worse than them. But yeah, Everton, even the Derby Day win, I think was actually hurt them. It hurt them, and that's a strange thing to say. But what it did is it blew expectations out the water, and it caused them problems because they weren't good enough in that game. We saw that even the
XG, Vignola scoring a hat trick from 0.2 XG is not a sustainable way to win football games.
Even when they were winning at half time, Sorensen made a triple change because he wasn't happy with the performance. And the fact they won that game, I think, then told them lies about where they actually were and how good they were, because they went into the next few games and thought, look at us, we just beat Liverpool 3-0 at Anfield, we can play foot out the back, we can score lovely goals, Vignola's going to win us the league, happy days. And then they lost to Tottenham, lost to Leicester, were really poor in the League Cup, and it's just spiraled out of control because they've tried, again, as you say, they're trying to run before they can walk. And I think because they won that first game, things got out of proportion, and they've tried to play fancy football out of the back and try and dominate teams and have possession and play really good football, and that just doesn't work with the players that they've got, with the quality in that team, and it's been really
But then
poor.
again, I do agree, when you're down in that position, you've got to play a bit more defensively, you've got to realise the situation you're in, but there was an expectation coming into this season with the amount of money they spent in the summer, with the move to Goodison Park now as a permanent home, that Everton would be a side who play nice football, who get results, and who compete in the top half. This has been a really poor start so far. But you look at their summer, Rion Ishikawa coming in, that's a big signing. Ruby Mace coming in for a fee around £200,000. That is a lot of money to spend on a defence midfielder who is used to playing really good possession-based football. So Everton have spent a lot of money. They've, Ornella Vignola coming in, that's a big signing, and she has been probably their best player, 4 goals so far this season. But they've signed a lot of players like that to play possession-based football. The problem they've got now is it's not working. They don't seem to have a senior right-back. I don't know what is happening there. Why on earth Karen Hargar keeps getting subbed on to play the last 20 minutes after we've watched Katie Robinson not really be able to do that role? You can't have 2 attacking fullbacks and both your defensive midfielders pushing up.
Yeah.
It's just everyone goes forward. There's no caution. Caution go to the wind, and just everyone runs forward when they attack. It just doesn't work. And then they are so poor at defensive transitions and so poor building out from the back. They are 2 areas which clearly have not been coached well enough, because their build-up structure is abysmal. The amount of times they've tried to play out and it just gets taken off them, and then the other team score immediately. I mean, Tottenham's 2 goals both came from playing out from the back, and it's a misplaced pass, and then a couple of passes and a goal, and even the second one came from Rion Ishikawa, poor touch. It's pounced on by England. Katinka Tandberg dinks Brosnan from 50 yards. So, yeah, it's been one of those seasons so far for Everton, but The performances haven't been good. The draw with Nottingham Forest in the League Cup does nothing but accentuate those issues. So yeah, drawing with Leicester, they were the better side in that game. They should have won. Noe Mouchon squeezed one at the near post. They should have done better with that one. Emily Ramsey, I think that's really disappointing. The United game, they scored first. They should have gone more defensive. They got completely opened up by Manchester United, especially in that second half. So yeah, I think it's been really poor for Everton so far.
Yeah, it has been really poor, as you say. I think it's kind of, it shows a little bit of Brighton last season, but they haven't got the attack to back it up, and the errors have been
They
pretty.
don't have Fran Kirby.
They don't
and
have,
Nikita Paris.
That is true, and as I say, the errors, the goals are conceded. You mentioned the Tamberg one there, the own goal against Man United. I could watch that every day, and I'd still have no idea how on earth that has managed to end up in their own net. The goal against Leicester, the goals they've conceded have been so poor. Like, fair enough, if teams rock up, like some of the United goals, they play brilliant passes and it was a great finish from certain players. But when you just hand goals to opposition, you can't expect to win football matches. And yeah, Sorensen, got to be a wake-up call. I really hope they've used this international break to butt their ideas up and learn how to play out of the back without just giving it away and automatically conceding football goals. They've got problems to sort. It has not been a very good start to the season, as I said. They are lucky that there are somehow two teams below them that have been worse than Everton.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at teams like this, you usually go, well, at least upon their League Cup games, but they lost to Man City. Admittedly, that's a very difficult game to play in the League Cup, and they drew a Forest. So, yeah, it's not been positive anywhere for Everton. D?
I think a D. It would be worse if they're in the bottom two than probably lower. But again, compared to expectations, I was expecting them to be in the bottom half, so it's not terrible. But they have on pitch have been really poor.
Yeah, absolutely. I think again putting them at the same level as Arsenal feels very fair to me. I think they're both underperformed by probably the same magnitude. Let's get on then to 11th place in the league, which is Liverpool. -8 goal difference, one of the two pointless teams. No, that's not an insult. That is a stat. Neither Liverpool or West Ham happy to have a single point yet in the league. It's been difficult to watch Liverpool this season. I don't think 0 points is merited. I think they've been better than that. I think the London City game, they definitely deserved a point. I think the Everton game, they deserve more from. The Leicester game, they should have won. Again, if those results happen, it's a completely different story. That is a massive, whataboutism, because they haven't got those points. They're on 0. I think the fact it's only a -8 goal difference when they haven't won a game of football yet, or haven't even drawn a game of football yet, says a lot. I think they've done okay defensively. In that City game, they were really decent defensively, but ultimately quality prevailed. I think only conceding 2 to Manchester United, they were helped out by a Lino, who just kept putting that flag out every time United came forwards. But yeah, the only big bad result was the Everton one, but a lot of that came down to goalkeeping errors. I think Rafael Borgraf has been a lot better in between the sticks than what they had before in Faye Kirby, but still not been positive. One positive, they have won both their League Cup games, 5 over Sunderland, only 2-1 over Durham. Isn't incredible, but it is a win. That's much more positive, but only 2 goals scored in the league this season, both by Cornelia Parks. They've got to be better in front of goal.
Yeah, they have got a little sharper in front of goal. I think, as you say, it's a little bit more promising in recent weeks. The London City, obviously, the last 3 results have been London City, Man City, and Durham. That's not, and they shouldn't have lost the 2 league games, and they beat Durham. So it's looked better, and that's why it looks more promising for them than West Ham's. We'll get onto in a moment, because Liverpool are showing signs of getting somewhere.
But also, Liverpool came into the season losing Olivia Smith, not holding on to her and holding on to all of their 3 Olivia Smiths. Like West Ham. It's a weird analogy. But they lost the best player. They have spent money in other areas, but they're players who perhaps aren't ready yet. And that's showing. They didn't recruit players who were going to come in and have an immediate impact. And so immediately, there's no impact. So they've lost a player who was so crucial last season, and it is going to take time for players like Bette Olsen to develop in that role. The difference for Liverpool last season is while Smith was still adapting to the league, Matt Bid had them playing super defensive football, and so they had no problem with games like that. The problem is Gareth Taylor wants to play this really progressive, possession-based style of football, which when you're in that sort of relegation dogfight, it's difficult. And when the points aren't coming, it's just going to keep harming them. They've got to get something soon. I think, again, you look at both the Leicester and London City games, they should have won those matches. They've got to start taking their chances in front of goal. The Everton game, even, how they fell apart from that 1-0 lead, I don't know. Everton were really poor in that match, and somehow they won 4-1. So, Yeah, one of those seasons. Liverpool, really poor start. I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as West Ham. I think
No.
Liverpool look a lot closer to picking up points soon, but they've got to be better in front of goal. If not, it's just going to continue down this same path. Grading wise, what are we looking at, Harry?
I think it's. I don't want to be too harsh. It's the new manager. It's a completely different tactical switch, and obviously they have played a game less, so they could still get something from that, and then they're off the pointness. So yeah, it's been a tough one for Liverpool. I think is it another D? I think he's very harsh, but.
But are they on the same level as Everton and Arsenal?
No.
I think it's been a more spectacular failure.
So yeah, I guess again,
Liverpool.
compared to expectations, I had them a lot higher than this going into the season. So yeah, I think an E. Obviously, again, I think there's been a lot of circumstances around their season which haven't helped them, and but they've got to get used to Gareth Taylor football, and that does take time because we know he's stubborn in his ways. So that is something that has hurt them a lot going into this season. So yeah, I think yeah, and I'll go an A because as I said, they haven't picked up a point at the end of the day, and that's not good enough at any level.
Yeah, indeed. Well, speaking of picking up a point, bottom of the league, West Ham, one of only 2 teams in the division to have a double-digit goal difference, except theirs is in the negative, -15 from the opening 6 games in the WSL. A loss as well in the League Cup. 2 wins in the League Cup is slightly better, but the league form has been atrocious. I think not just the results, 5-1 to Arsenal, 4-1 to Brighton, 4-0 to Chelsea. Of course, they are terrible results, but it's been the performance, it's been the manner of those results that is really, really poor.
Yeah, they have been rubbish. Let's be honest. Let's say it. It sounds like, but they have been absolutely rubbish. It's the manner that they've gone out and played. It's nowhere near the WSL standard. They are miles off it. The decisions from both the players on the pitch and the manager and the staff of it have been so bizarre. As you mentioned it earlier, losing to Arsenal and deciding to throw Ryan Skinner putting on 2 attackers to try and win, turn the game around heroically. Never going to happen.
It's 2-1, fair enough.
Yeah.
3-1 though, not worth it. And when you get to 4-1, then change it again. Yeah. But 5-1, yeah.
Just decision making has been terrible. The mistakes in games like the London City one, you cannot afford to do that at this level. They have been just really, really poor across the board, and there is pressure on Rayanne Skinner. And last year she turned it around, but the hole they were in wasn't as deep as this season. She has got work to do, and again, I think I've given Rayanne Skinner her flowers at times over the last few years because she's done a good job. And a few years ago, she was a good manager, but the league is developing, the game is changing, tactics are coming through, and we're seeing a lot of managers coming in with different ideas. And I look at West Ham at times, and there just doesn't seem to be any identity. I don't think Rayanne Skinner knows what she wants to do, or the way that she wants to play just isn't up to the modern standard. And
or it's not being communicated to the group. There could be an identity there, but it's just not showing. It's not working out on the field. So there's got to be either a change in what you're doing or a change in how you're delivering that message. I think that the problem again is that when you look at where to fix, it's a bit like Tottenham from last season, a bit like Palace, is that last season for West Ham, defensively they were awful. But the fact that they were good coming forwards and that Asayi and Martinez and Ueki looked really dangerous, that was a big positive for West Ham. But this season they have scored 2 goals. An own goal from Vafli van Donselaar and a penalty for Vivian Asayi. They've not scored a single open play goal in the league this season. Yes, they've beaten Charlton 5-1 in the Cup. Yes, they've beaten Brighton 2-1 in the League Cup. They are both very positive results. But when is that going to translate over into the league? I think the London City performance was much better. But again, giving the ball away in such circumstances when you were so close to getting your first point of the season and getting off the bottom of the table, that's really disappointing. Yeah. And I think it says a lot about where West Ham are right now.
Yeah, it's game management. It's one of the biggest things that you can have when you're down the bottom. We mentioned Leicester. What do? They're on for a point. Rip past less, past more, get out the ground. It's simple. But yet, why in the last few minutes of a game where you're about to pick up your first point of the season, are you fanning around trying to play it out the back? Just put your foot through it. I think what has hurt West Ham is it's the basics, it's the fundamentals of how you survive in a division. They are getting completely wrong. The box defending has been abysmal. I don't think this it's happened. The Chelsea and Arsenal games, my days, they could just walk into the penalty area and no one was in there. Didn't seem like there were any defenders on the pitch. It was so bizarre. They're just getting the basics wrong. if you're down there now, and what they should switch to, and it's not a pretty way to play football, but right, you defend properly, you defend as a bank of 4 or as a bank of 5, and you go direct into Asai and direct into Martinez and get them to hold the ball up, and you just play route one football and try and get some points on the board now. That's exactly how they've got to go around it. If they keep trying to play out the back and play good football, they will be in that relegation playoff, no doubt about it. They've got to turn it around, and as you say, there's got to be a change in direction and a change in system or tactical tweaks, whatever. And if that doesn't happen, then the only other thing you can change is the manager. And that is something that has got to concern Ryan Skinner at this stage. They've got to change what they're trying to do, because if not, they are banging trouble. Because yes, Liverpool are also on 0 points, but I can look at Liverpool and go, we know that it takes time for Gareth Taylor in bed, and we've seen some goals, and we've seen them do something.
It's been a lot more positive for
yeah.
performances for Liverpool. The fact they haven't conceded as many as West Ham have. They've been on the end of 1 drubbing, you could say, the Everton game.
Yeah.
West Ham on the end of 5.
Yeah.
Sorry, 3, not 5. That's incredibly bad. 3 drubbings, though. Admittedly, all against big teams, or good teams in Brighton, Arsenal and Chelsea. But it's got to be better from West Ham. I think in terms of a grading, an F would be lose every match 5-0. They've not done that. I think an E is fair at this point, but it's been a really bad start to the season for West Ham.
Yeah, the other thing, again, is that expectations. I didn't expect West Ham. If I expect West Ham to be in the Champions League this season, then it's absolutely an F. But again, I expect them to be in the bottom half. I just thought they might actually play some football. I mean, what has happened to that front three? How have they? That was, if they'd lost Shakira Martinez again, I'd probably say maybe it's a D, because that makes sense.
You've got that mitigation, but they haven't.
Yeah, but they've kept them. What have they done to them over the off season? I don't know what's happened, but yeah, I think an E is fair. They need to back their ideas up though, because right now for me they are banging trouble.
Yeah, I've been playing with them on the new FM. We're 9th, so Ryan Skinner. If you want some ideas, get in touch, because I'm smashing it on FM. Still not incredibly high though. I think says a lot about that squad. That is very difficult to drag it up the league. But yeah, I think that is all for today's video. I didn't think it would get over an hour, but we have had a lot of very positive conversations. So if you have enjoyed, I hope you have. For those of you that usually tune in for our usual week uploads where we have like an hour and 12 minutes, this will be great for you. And for anyone new that stuck around all the way to the end, well, thank you very much. Yeah. Firstly, well done for sticking with us, and thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed. If you have enjoyed, go and check out the video on screen now. I don't know which one it's going to be. It's going to be whatever YouTube thinks is best for you, so that'll be on screen now. That was everything from us today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. See ya.